Welcome back to Athletes Anonymous presents The Fifth Down. We will be talking about everything going on in the football realm. There were a ton of moves made since our last pod, so we're going to be discussing all of the winners and losers from the free agency beginning. Let's get to that intro music. And welcome back to the podcast. I am your co-host, Keone McKeague, and with me, as always, are my longtime friends and co-hosts, Nolan Chang, Jared Chirai, Jalen Holston. Say what's up to the pod, boys.
What is up? It's crack-a-lackin'. It's a shooting day. It's always a good time, fellas.
Can I just say it's super unfortunate that, immediately after our last The Fifth Down pod, there were so many moves made.
Just like two moves and then a million the next week.
Like literally. Finish, and I was like, oh, good. All I see is NFL news. And I'm like, bro, did they just shoot all this shit?
Yeah, our stream just got completely blown up with all these different moves that were made. But first and foremost, let's say what's up to the pod, boys.
Hello.
Hello. Cheers.
Back again. Yes, cheers. Yeah.
It's funny because we're getting on to the free agency period of the NFL. There were a ton of guys moving. I mean, I'll be honest, when it comes to fantasy football, it's going to be a hell of a crapshoot because there were so many moves that it's going to be hard to even draft knowing what teams these guys are even on because I'm
going to wait till the week before the draft to figure it out.
You're telling me because there's so many guys who actually moved that I feel like went to worse situations and there's some guys who went to better situations. But first and foremost, I want to kick it off with you, Jalen, because we're going to talk about our pseudo team here, the Chicago Bears. Man, they made a lot of moves, both on the offensive end and the defensive end. More specifically, they got some guys in the name of P.J. Walker. For those who don't know, P.J. Walker is a quarterback who came from the XFL, and he was it XFL or kind of like the...
It was XFL, yeah.
Okay, it was XFL. So P.J. Walker came out of the XFL. His play style is kind of like a Justin Fields-esque player. He kind of is more of a mobile quarterback. So understandably so, they got him as their second quarterback for their team. And then on to the rest of the team, they got Deontay Foreman to replace the now Detroit Lion, David Montgomery. They kind of got a lot of different upgrades. But I'm going to say, do you think that they're kind of winners or losers for the free agency deadline thus far, especially after their big trade of the number one overall pick?
Oh, so far they're still winning. I mean, for perspective to their team, right? So you get his big number one receiver, DJ Moore. You get draft picks, which you can still bolster the rest of that defense around the linebacker that they acquired. So I mean, they're definitely winning and they're going in the right direction. The GM clearly has it's nice to see an organization when the GM is kind of in that spot to set a team, set a plan forward, and you can see it through their agency acquirements and whatnot. So it's very evident that the GM for the Bears right now is Justin Fields is our dude. Here's how we're fixing the defense. Here's the roadmap going forward. We got you a big number one, doesn't have to run as much, hopefully, and we'll kind of go from there.
Do you think that there's more pressure on Justin Fields as I'm going to say it's a second-year quarterback because technically he's been in the league this will be his third year, but this will be his true coming out party for lack of a better term, as far as getting the pieces around him. I know they signed a couple of offensive linemen to kind of protect him. Do you think that this is putting pressure on Justin Fields to basically possibly make it to the playoffs, or it's what do you put his the goal for him this year?
See, I think the bar is at least being 8-9 wins as a franchise, being in that wild card hunt. I think if they make a wild card race game by the end of the year, I think that's a huge turnaround for the Chicago Bears considering where they were at last year, with basically him dragging that team to any hope of a victory. Whether or not they were able to finish those games or not. I think that would be a phenomenal turnaround to see them in the wild card by the end of the playoffs. So,
all right. So besides the Chicago Bears, who do you kind of have as your major winner of the free agency thus far?
Right now, it is far and away going to be the Saints. I mean, We talked about the. I listen. Derek Carr is terrible. That's the worst pick. But they stole. They. In case you guys aren't aware, the Chiefs are where everyone's getting all these amazing.
I thought you were going to say 3-2-1 before he mentions the Chiefs, which you just did.
I was like,
I did, but it's true though because here's what happens
on one of your buttons.
Yes,
I probably could.
You really do need to record it on one of your.
Instead of saying it, just fucking press a button.
Get one with like
randomly
a
in
whole
one of our
bunch
other
of grit.
segments. Fuck their car.
Exactly. That's got to be a T-shirt at some point, surely.
That
Just saying.
probably would be not allowed.
No, it's allowed.
Oh, it's
100%.
okay.
100% allowed.
Always allowed.
I'll be the one to wear it.
Podcast,
Only.
I'm sure.
But no, as things happen, we are trying to be a franchise like that of New England and keep a culture of success. So therefore, when people want money, we let them go. So in that case, you got, Kalen Saunders going down there in addition to what was already there, getting Derek Carr. And I believe they signed another offensive weapon to go with him. The name is escaping me because there's been so many.
It was a running back,
News.
and that is Jamal Williams.
Jamal Williams from Detroit.
Williams.
So then you have Kalen Saunders to come in and help your defense. I mean, they are making some pretty big moves to try to jumpstart that franchise back up down there. The Dallas Cowboys, I'm sorry if you're a fan of that franchise, but they are just not doing anything. I have not seen any signing.
I mean, they
intention
made a
of a
trade
signing.
today.
Yeah. They got
It's
Cooks, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty mid trade, if I'm going to be honest here. As the guy who actually held on to Brandon Cooks last year, from a fantasy perspective,
That's who they got.
I mean, you still have Dak there,
Prescott.
so it is a little interesting that you
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Until
yeah.
Dak's gone, you're not going to win ever.
And it was for a 5th and a 6th, which is
That is awful. That is awful. And then, of course, the Jets will probably end up being. I don't think they're going to be winners, but they're. Who knows? You know what I mean? I have money down that it'll be a complete disaster. Because ironically, the good old guy A-Rod was like, they don't give me enough weapons in Green Bay. Also, give me all the exact same weapons that I had in Green Bay when I go to New York.
I knew you were going to bring up that meme.
Like, who is this
his best
guy?
friend.
Yeah.
Who is this guy?
I'm with you from that standpoint, because really it's like, how can you make demands, especially after the last couple of years that you've had, like to make demands for a team that you're not even a part of yet.
No.
Still technically not a part of it.
Because they're in negotiations for compensation, so that's going to be a while. But he is going to go to the Jets if it ever goes through. That is the destination spot for Aaron Rodgers. So, but yeah, I think the Saints right now are just red hot with some of the signings they're picking up. I mean, they felt they needed they felt
like
they
how you
needed.
hesitated.
I'm sorry. They felt like they needed
this.
a real quarterback, so they thought it was Derek Carr.
They did.
I mean, it could have been
Jameis
Jimmy
Winston.
Garoppolo. I don't know.
They did hold on to Jameis Winston, so
They
Jameis
did,
Winston
which
will
is
be
nice.
back in a
So
while.
at least they have the two. They have two.
Yeah, they do have an option to go back to.
They have
Mid
let's
quarterbacks.
put two viable quarterbacks, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
that's being too nice.
That's a nice way to put it. A nice way to put it.
Thank
Mid was
God the
better.
Raiders got Jimmy Garoppolo. Whew, two more free wins on the Raiders every year. Thank you. Appreciate it. You're the best. So yeah, it's definitely going to be the Saints right now.
That's
With Jamal Williams and
perfect-
Kalen Saunders, it's just that. Those are great pickups
Great
for
names.
them.
Yeah, but that's a perfect transition into Nolan, who I will be throwing over your favorite team, who just got rid of your favorite quarterback. Now riding with Jimmy Garoppolo as their number one QB. They made a few different moves for the offseason. I know that they actually let go of Hunter Renfrow, if I'm not mistaken.
And Darren Waller too.
Oh,
Yeah,
they traded
but
Darren Waller.
They did
Yeah.
make the trade of Darren Waller to the Giants for nothing. Essentially, I don't really understand.
Renfrow
what the
is
trade
kicked him
was.
out.
I still
basically.
see Hunter Renfrow on the depth.
because the coach wasn't invited to the wedding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there was that issue with Kelsey Plum and all them. First and foremost, obviously looking at the Raiders, they are a little bit of a different team. They still have Devontae Adams. They still have Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs a little upset about the Darren Waller trade, but now they have Jimmy Garoppolo coming into the team as a veteran quarterback. Do you think that they now have a better shot with Jimmy G there instead of Derek Carr? And on top of that, who are your big winners or losers for the trade deadline? Because I did see you made kind of a face when Jay said that it was the Saints.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't see this team getting more wins than it did last season. They do have Jacoby Myers signed, which
Myers, that's
a big one. Yeah.
That was a nice
passing
signing
to the Raiders already
Patriots.
from last season in that big second debacle. Do you guys remember that?
Yes.
Was Jacoby?
Yeah, it was
He
Jacoby.
threw as a quarterback?
No,
Weird.
it was like, what do you call it? I am not versed in when last second.
No. Explain exactly how
Hail Mary? Was it a Hail Mary throw?
No, it was laterals. He was trying to,
Jet
running.
sweep type deal? Yeah, okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Just trying to get. It was a tie game, and he chucked it laterally backwards and right into a Raiders. player's
Gotcha.
hand, and it's
Okay,
ran
gotcha.
for a touchdown.
Yeah,
got the win.
now I know what you're talking about. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So, I don't think this team's going to do much better. Got rid of Waller. Waller, even though he's injury prone, was a pretty solid tight end for them.
Stud.
And the Giants now have him, so we'll see how the Giants are going to step it up from last year's.
They've made some pretty impressive moves as well. The only mistake they made was signing and extending Daniel Jones.
Yeah. It is a little interesting because they did sign Daniel Jones. They got him a couple of new weapons from Indianapolis. They ended up getting Paris Campbell.
Yep.
Solid wide receiver, so I thought that was a good move. Darius Slayton did re-sign with the Giants. They did get Darren Waller, so they are kind of shoring up a little bit of the holes that were there for their team, especially because they already had resurging Saquon Barkley. So,
We'll see.
yeah, they may.
But why? He's so bad.
Yeah.
You're telling me Lamar Jackson doesn't have a contract right now. Meanwhile, Derek Carr has a new deal in New Orleans. Daniel Jones has a new deal in New York. And Aaron Rodgers is going to get a new deal.
Yeah.
Garoppolo got traded for a new deal.
Yeah.
What? This man has won an MVP. And none of those players, aside from Aaron Rodgers 15,000 years ago when dinosaurs were walking around, have an MVP.
I've
make
said
it
off
make
pod,
sense.
I'll say this right now. I've said off pod that I personally would not like the Steelers to go after a guy like Lamar Jackson because I do think we're in that realm where we're trying to figure things
insane.
Out. We're still in the realm of I will say this. We're still in the realm of figuring things out. So do I think that Lamar Jackson puts us in title contention? I don't, because we don't have all of the necessary pieces locked in as far as what's around him. I don't think you can make the face, Jay, but the Ravens haven't done it, and it's a fact. He hasn't even gotten to the finals on his end of the NFL spectrum. And
because
they've
run him into the goddamn ground.
That doesn't
matter. You guys
matter.
have your huge number one wide receiver. You have a better offensive line than the Ravens. Your defense is young and ferocious.
That right there is debatable because we do not have that great of an offensive line. This was their first year together entirely.
And it's only going to get better. Like, you guys are primed to progress and get better when he gets into his prime years as a quarterback. And you're thinking Kenny Pickett from Pitt's going to get you the job done, son? What crack are you smoking?
He had 1 year,
Jay.
have some? He had 1 year. I was like, I'll give him another 3-4 years to figure out where he's at, what his peak is. Because
I can tell you what it is.
My
below average.
I personally would rather spend that money on my defense. I think my defense has always been one of the top defenses in the league. If we're throwing $200 million at a guy who is injury prone and doesn't necessarily make it into the playoffs, I mean, the last 2 years he gets injured before they even get into any sort of.
Does last year really count? Do you really think he couldn't have gone out there and played? Come on.
And on top of that, you also have to play into the story that he is a Raven. And for all intents and purposes,
exactly. I think it makes it better.
We do not like Ravens over here.
Makes it literally better because he's going to the enemy team to dismantle the Ravens.
It's too much money to pay a guy, regardless of where he's at playing wise. It's too much money to pay anybody. And
I understand your sentiment.
I've never liked paying quarterbacks that much money to just. I'd rather build our defense.
Hear me out. Okay, let's go with head coaches that have been in Super Bowls the last 4 years. Okay, you've got Andy Reid, 3 out of the last 4, right? Been in those. Okay, offensive guy. Okay, Buccaneers. You had one there, more of a defensive guy, kind of, but actually no, he wasn't. He was an offensive coordinator for Tom Brady before Bull stepped out. Yes, he was. Mm-hmm. Offensive guy. Okay, on the other side, 49ers. We all know about the Shanahans. Mm-hmm. Offensive guy. Okay, so there's 2. And then you got Doug Peterson, offensive guy. Defense is dead, bro. We're living in a new era. So if you are still saying that time is where it's at for the Steelers, that's why you guys are stuck in the mud. That is. Like, if you guys would invest in the offense and catch up with the NFL and get Lamar Jackson, you're playing in an AFC championship next year, I promise. Because the Browns are still going to be trash. The Ravens won't have Lamar Jackson.
I'll say this. If we sign him, we lose a guy like Minka or we lose a guy like TJ Watt. And neither one of those guys is the type of guy you want to lose for a team that is not necessarily figured out yet. That's why I personally don't feel like right now would be the right time to bring him in. Had it been maybe a couple years back where we had the Antonio Brown, the triple Bs, we used to call them, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown days, I would have said, hell yeah, let's bring in Lamar Jackson. The team is set up perfectly to bring in a guy like him. Right now, it's just not the right time. And I was like, that's a lot of money to commit. $200 million in the NFL is different than, say, the NBA, where $200 million might be like literally like the third guy on the bench, which just makes no sense to me. But yeah, exactly. We're not going to get those contracts. $200 million in the NFL is a lot of money. But that's personally why I wouldn't bring him in this year. Had it been 5 years back, 100%. This year, it's too much money. But yeah, so I mean, moving on from that discussion over to Jared, because I do kind of want to get into another team that I know you'd been all over for the entire year, saying that they kind of had a shot to like make it big for the rest of the year. We're going to throw it to the 49ers because I do think that they're a team that sort of added random pieces to their, I can't really say that they're great pieces, but they did add some depth. They obviously lost Jimmy G. They're fully riding with Brock Purdy for the rest of their time built
is it
together
Brock,
now.
Or is it going to be?
That was exactly
that. You know what I mean?
That was exactly what I wanted to throw over to Jared because
get in there.
Obviously, you have the late season success of Brock Purdy, but you have sort of what will be kind of like the upside pick. And wow, I just forgot his name.
It's not Trey Lance. No, it is Trey
Lance. It is Trey Lance.
There you go. I always get him and Jordan Love flipped. I swear to God.
Same. Exactly. So Trey Lance now is kind of an afterthought because of the success of Brock Purdy. Do you think that they're going to kind of ride? Obviously, they made, as far as their team is concerned, it's all lateral moves. Nothing lost, nothing really gained. They kind of kept it directly there in the middle. They added Sam Darnold, who was a questionable add for all intents and purposes. But now they have Brock Purdy. They also have a returning Trey Lance. Do you think that which direction are you feeling more comfortable with? Is there a direction that you want to kind of push this team towards? And more importantly, do you think that they still kind of have a shot to kind of build with now CMC having a now full year with the Niners?
Yeah, let's just trade the two and get Lamar. I mean,
if Lamar were there,
I mean, you had Lamar, and then you have Sam Darnold because they signed him just now, right? So I mean, you have that as your backup. Like that would be ideal. Yeah, like real ideal. But I think for me, like the way they ended with Brock Purdy and the chip on his shoulder, like we all talked about, like we love the way he played the game.
Oh yeah,
but it all comes off of how he comes back from injury. Like for me, that's what it is.
What was the injury? I completely forgot.
Wasn't it like an elbow tendon or something?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Because he could only throw 10 yards or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so him coming off of that, and then Trey Lance just kind of finding it. I think Sam Darnold's going to be ranked as in a depth chart is going to be ranked higher than Trey Lance, in my opinion, even if it's just a 1-year deal. Because I think the experience and everything as far as that goes is just going to step into it.
He was a starting quarterback not even a year and a half ago. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think that'll be I think they're going to ride Brock Purdy because just in the fact of how young he is and what he's shown and his ability to have that fire and lead before his injury. Like we said, it's really sad in that NFC conference finals or the finals that he did get injured, so that's why the Eagles had a free route basically to the Super Bowl. But a full year with Christian McCaffrey is just going to be amazing. I mean, he did amazing things for me on both teams. But I think as far as I don't know, it just sounded like you said Christian McCaffrey. I was like, who's Christian McCaffrey? Christian McCaffrey. Open your ears, Hawaiian. But having a whole year with him, I think is going to make a big difference because he had to learn the offense and do it, insert himself on the fly. And now that everybody's a little more comfortable and understands what the offensive setting is, basically when he's in, it makes a big difference because it gives him a lot more options. So quarterback-wise, I think they're going to just ride with Brock Purdy, and I think bringing in Sam Darnold is a insurance move just in case because you have that experience. I mean, they'll probably still ride Trey Lance just because I think Trey Lance was supposed to be their gun, right, coming into this last season. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think their experience will always win over anything else in any sport. You can have youth, but it's like the game experience that Sam Darnold has, I think, allows him to overtake that second spot.
Do you have any early winners for free agency thus far?
As much as we hate Derek Carr, I think I do like the Saints. I really do like the Saints. I think for me that's just a better move. I may not agree with picking of Derek Carr as their better move, but I think of a lot of things. I think just in that team in general. For me, they're on the losing side, though. I think Vegas loses in this. And it's not because of Jimmy G. It's just because, they failed to get the big name.
I was like, is it not because of Jimmy G?
No, it is. It is. I was trying to be nice, man. We're trying to get the guy back in the league and actually played. I liked him before.
Is he an upgrade over Derek Carr?
I do. I think he's an upgrade. But I think there's just a lot of people who just don't want to play with him. Look at what Devontae Adams did right away. He's like, I want to trade. You got the best receiver on that team saying that he doesn't want to play with you. That's just – it sucks, And for Vegas to have signed somebody like a Jimmy G and then have your best receiver literally say, I'm gone. I don't want to play for this guy. I don't want to play with this guy. I don't want anything to do with him.
Well, it's because they did Derek so dirty to get him off the team. Has that been a mutual hey, we've been trying this for a couple of years, hasn't really worked out. I'm starting to get to that point in my career. Maybe let's try a new adventure or something like that. And it was amicable. Maybe they won an AFC championship or two, something like that. You'd have a very different story. But when clutch time came down to it, Derek Carr just hasn't done well. And neither, honestly, Devontae Adams choked a couple of really big games as well.
Agree. And that's why it sucks because you're going to listen to your receiver over that. In regard. It's he got opportunities. And that was the thing that sucked. He did get the opportunity. It's not I got 3 targets. Dude, you are the number 1 receiver. We're giving you the ball, and you just failed to show up. And I mean,
and he's billed as a possession guy, so he's one of those guys that you're supposed to be able to throw into a crowd, and he's supposed to be able to come down with it.
Yeah,
they would have beat us on that Monday night if he didn't step out of bounds. Straight up, they would have walked away out of Arrowhead Stadium with the victory had he not stepped out of bounds on that 40-yard catch.
Did Devontae Adams actually request a trade? I thought it was a cryptic story that
it was a cryptic story. Yeah.
But I do feel like people at this point, everybody takes everything into consideration. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I'm sure he's thinking about it.
It's the age of social media. And you can say anything and anything you want, but if you put it out there, people are going to take it into consideration.
Timing is impeccable whenever you post something.
Exactly.
So you guys know.
Yeah. Facts. Yeah. And that's why I don't post anything.
That's true. That's true.
But
I think the Buccaneers are also winners signing that big QB from LA. You know what I mean?
Are you sure?
It's huge.
I mean, I think they're a bigger winner with the fact that Tom Brady retired.
that too. That too. I was really hoping. I was really hoping that Baker was going to stay in LA with Sean McVay, but
yeah,
I don't think being in Tampa is a bad shout. I mean,
I 100%.
I think it'll be fine. He'll do 1 year, and then he's going to be the next Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's where I'm leaning to see. I think that's what Baker's journey is going to be.
They have good success there because he does have the pieces around him.
There are some solid ones left, yeah.
That he can, and I mean the draft is still coming, and then they could trade up and they make trades on deadline on draft day. Sorry, that he could literally run a good offense, and if it's successful, he'll be there for more than 1 year.
Still a great O-line because they bolstered it for Tom Brady.
Yeah, they had to. Yeah. I mean, let's be real.
Despite him playing awful.
Not that there were a ton of tight ends or that were moved necessarily, or that moved necessarily for the free agency kind of starting, but I mean, there are a lot of guys who did end up moving teams, and I think that's one of those teams that didn't necessarily lose a lot of the things that they had. They did lose Cameron Brate. I know that he walked, or they technically let him walk, but not necessarily one of those top end names that you're thinking of. But I'm going to kind of swing the conversation into more of like the fantasy side of this, because we do have a lot of people that ended up moving teams. Just on this small list that I have here, there are 12 notable quarterbacks that ended up moving teams. There are 8 notable running backs that ended up moving teams, and there are now 8 notable wide receivers that ended up moving teams. Jay, swinging it over to you. Obviously, I think not speaking on any of those positions that I spoke about just now, you did lose somebody who went to a rival in the AFC. Orlando Brown ended up signing with the Cincinnati Bengals. I know that you had kind of talked about it just recently about him moving to another team, and they did make that an official signing. So now they are without that. Juju Smith-Schuster, another guy that you guys ended up losing, ended up going to the Patriots. I just want to throw over the question to you, because of all the movement that has happened with a lot of these kind of outlier players. I don't necessarily consider them. I mean, Orlando Brown is a big one, but as far as like Juju, there are a lot of players on this list that we'll probably go over after this that were let go that I wouldn't consider stars necessarily, but like good pieces to have.
Frank Clark is on that list as well.
Yes, that is another one. Did he officially sign somewhere else?
Not signed yet, but he has been let go, so he's on the market.
Yeah. So there are some names from your team specifically. I'm going to let you kind of. I mean, obviously we've seen this play out before. They've lost pieces and they've somehow made up for those lost pieces. What do you kind of see for your Kansas City Chiefs thus far, and as far as what they're doing now?
In Veach we trust, you know what I mean? It's, none of those guys are the equivalent to a Tyreek Hill. Let me just put it that way. But it is a lot, you know what I mean? That defense kind of carried us into the Super Bowl and got us a big couple stops there towards the end of the game against Jalen Hurts. So it does kind of suck to see Frank Clark go. It sucks to see that a couple of our really good corners were going, like Thornhill, and obviously now Kalen Saunders. But, I mean, we've also made some fantastic pickups. We got the defensive tackle and / defensive end from the 49ers to go opposite Karl Loftus and Omanehu. And we're also kind of trying to figure out ways to trade in from stealing a Jacksonville right tackle, left tackle to replace Wiley and now Orlando Brown. So
supremely underrated line there. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think their offensive line was definitely not one of their weak points all year.
Agreed.
So, I mean, it's just kind of one of those things where it sucks to see those players leave, because if we could keep them forever, we would. But, there's this saying about it, the NFL being a business, and you see all these posts from these players saying how thankful they are and yada, yada. And I'm kind of over it. You know what I mean? Like, you guys make millions of dollars. Don't come at me with this shit about, I got to take care of my family and blah, blah, blah. Like, you make millions of dollars. Most of us barely get to $60K if we're lucky.
Yeah. I would like to make $1 million.
Right. Yeah. If any of us made $1 million, we could all turn that into generational wealth. You guys made it the day you got into the league and some. So don't come at me with this bullshit about taking care of your family. I got X amount of time in the league. Like, no, dude. And I'm really over this notion of like not being able to keep teams together because players are always about the bottom dollar. I know it's not necessarily them, but like, and some people try to make the agent argument to me as well when it comes to all these free agency things and whatnot. Like, it's really the agents doing it, not the players. It's like, well, the player, like the agent works for the fucking player. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's what they do. That's true. And at the end of the day, obviously the agents don't make as much money if they don't get a bigger contract, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, like if you wanted to stay somewhere, you would. And like,
you know, it's funny not to dispute that entire argument, but like because I'm in agreement with you first and foremost. But Laramie Tunsil of the Houston Texans, one of the best blindside guards in the league, has been negotiating his own contracts since he started with the team. He is entering another year where he just got another 3-year extension, is going to be the highest paid blindside guard in the entire league, and he negotiated his own deal. And
exactly.
The fact that he's able to not only kind of negotiate his own deals, but also make it so that he knows when those money jumps are going to happen, right? He times it perfectly so that his contract is over when the next big money jump is about to happen. I mean, it can be done. You just have to educate yourself. It's one of those things like the entire argument for my agent didn't whatever, like it doesn't make any sense because you see a guy like Laramie Tunsil literally setting the precedence for how it should be done.
Yeah, and Lamar Jackson's doing the same thing. He doesn't have an agent, and he's just going off of what he knows, which is now, unfortunately, the market that was set by Deshaun Watson's agent when that whole thing went down. So he's doing right by himself, and I mean that's fine. But like at the end of the day, if you really want to play somewhere, you will. And none of these players actually want to play anywhere; they just want to get paid. And the ones that do, like Sir Mahomes, will take the time to restructure their contract because the way that he makes money is not even from the NFL, really. Like, he makes a minimal amount based off of what his contract is. But if you would remember, after he got his big $500 million contract, that same year, he invested in Sporting KC, took ownership partially of the Kansas City Royals, opened multiple business lines with Adidas. Like, he made the bulk of his financial money outside the NFL. So, like, his contract doesn't mean jack shit to him realistically because he's going to make 3 times more on those other things versus what he's getting from the NFL.
Keep trying to figure it out while your boy's getting rings.
Exactly. Like, it's not hard, guys. Like, if you want to stay, you will. Travis Kelce's done the same thing. He's renegotiated and restructured 3 times to keep this team to be able to stay with Kansas City as long as possible. So, like, it just goes to show none of you are, like, you're all fake. You know what I mean? Thank you for your service, but you're fake.
Wow.
I don't believe a word you say when you
shout out these. Orlando Brown.
I'm sorry. Like, I love Kevin Wiley. I love Orlando. Like, I thank you guys so much. Obviously, you've changed the lives of like so many people in Kansas City. Like, thank you, and I respect you so much for playing hard and getting us those rings. But like, you're fake, and I see you right through the post.
Not to get deeper into this, but how do you feel about him going to not just a team, but going to the Cincinnati Bengals, who are going to probably be your
It's going to be worse for Joe Burrow. I'm going to tell you that right now. Like, he is not what he thinks he is.
Keep it a buck, Jay. Keep it a buck.
He is a below average for his position. He wanted to be paid top dollar.
Wow.
And somebody took the bait, which is shocking.
Yeah, we are going in today.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Like Orlando. Like, I'm more upset about Kevin Wiley than I am about Orlando Brown being not being able to get re-signed. Straight up. Like, I was down to have Orlando Brown leave and then get somebody that was actually better. So that is what it is. We haven't retained Jerick McKinnon. I think there'll be a riot in the streets if we can't re-sign Jerick McKinnon. I swear, I'm not kidding. Like, if we can't re-sign anybody, like, I don't think he's that expensive. I don't think for what his role is, we could easily get a 2-year, $15 million deal done. It won't hurt the cap that much at all.
Could have won Comeback Player of the Year. I'm just saying, if it hadn't been for Geno Smith, there was an opportunity for that dude to get something because a hell of an underrated year for your team.
Unsung hero, man. I mean, absolute unsung hero.
In the Super Bowl, yeah.
Yeah. So,
100%.
And then as far as the other teams, it's kind of the same way, man. I think, like I said, I think the Cincinnati Bengals actually hurt themselves by getting Orlando Brown versus what they had, because he did give up so many pressures from that side for Patrick Mahomes during the season. So I think it was a monumental downgrade, and they got fleeced a little bit. So good on us for making that trade happen and maybe scrounging together some more things. Like I said, in Veach we trust. When the Tyreek thing happened, everybody panicked. I was somewhat on that boat. But then as I sat and thought about it, saw the pieces we kind of picked up along the way, I was just like,
one of those rare win-win scenarios, by the way. Yeah. That was a very good win-win for both Tyreek and for your team.
I don't know if it was a win for Tyreek after, now that everything's said and done, because the dude is still just pining and wishing he was in KC.
That's
Super
true.
Cryptic.
I just meant him having a hell of a year, but
I mean, he still had a solid year. Yeah.
For the Dolphins standpoint, he had a great year, but for all intents and purposes, they obviously did not do well.
Personal, I mean, your team you left or that you got let go from literally won a Super Bowl. I mean, that sucks.
And had you not been a greedy bastard, you would have been on that team.
Part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is a perfect way to segue into Nolan, who I will be kind of presenting. Obviously, we now have a two-headed kind of snake with their defense for the Miami Dolphins. They now just made the trade for Jalen Ramsey. Obviously, your boys from the Rams ended up giving him up. He now has Xavier Howard to kind of be at a tandem with him for their defense. They obviously have still the two-headed offense of Tyreek and Waddle. Yeah, Jalen Waddle on their team, with them kind of losing Gesicki, but they still got those two guys, which is more than enough to kind of make up for that loss. Do you kind of see them as winners of the trade deadline now that they got Jalen Ramsey? And more importantly, do you think that this is kind of their year to get to that? I mean, they haven't yet got there, but do you think that this is their playoff push year?
I think we talked about last pod. I think Jalen Ramsey, he didn't have the greatest season on the Rams last year. Mm-hmm. But like we've discussed before, he's a solid cornerback, and he's probably going to elevate their defense. It really depends on if they're riding with Tua,
Ooh, so this is a Tua point.
Tua.
They did sign Mike White, who was the starter for the New York Jets.
Tua got a lot of heart. He's a decent quarterback, and I think that Hill and Waddle made him look a lot better than he actually is. Forgive me if I'm wrong. Did they just lose Gesicki?
They did. He's on the Patriots now.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I mean, all in all, I don't know if they're really going to take that jump. I think that it really is going to be dependent on Tua staying healthy, as well as Tua performing in the way he did when it mattered most last season. Mm-hmm. Defense could probably take the step up now if Jalen Ramsey kind of has that chip on his shoulder, knowing that last season I think it was like there was like a meme or something that came up and said, like, after he was like yelling in the camera like I'm him or something, he went like 0-8 the next 8 games, which is pretty sad for an LA Rams fan, but
big yikes.
Yeah, big
yikes for me, though.
LA's had a rough this year so far.
A little cringe, you know what
I mean? But anyway, yeah, I think the Dolphins, I don't see them doing much better than they did last year, but they could. It's really just dependent on Tua, to be honest.
Now, if they got Lamar Jackson.
What in the world?
Oh, my God. Holy Toledo,
that would
Batman.
Damn.
His arm with
Damn.
Tyreek.
That's all I'm going to say.
His arm
live in Miami,
with
right?
Tyreek.
With a resurging Jeff Wilson and returning Jeff Wilson on top of those two guys.
Spicy.
Yeah.
Do they have the money to?
No.
This is absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Especially after paying Jalen Ramsey. They definitely do not have any money.
Well,
wouldn't it be cool, though?
Wouldn't
that's
it
a
be
big thing
cool?
with the
So
NFL.
cool.
They don't give them nearly enough money to pay all of these players to be on one team. I'm going to kind of swing it over to you, Jared, because you were a guy, obviously, you won fantasy football this year. So, you know,
He also
to you,
beat
boy.
Keone multiple times.
Yes, he did. Actually, no, that was more Nolan. Me and Jared kind of had a split for the year.
Yeah, I think we split. I see, but in the playoffs,
exactly. I beat you in the regular. You beat me in the post. So there was
the one that matters. He won.
The one
so,
that thank you, Jay. Thank you.
The one that matters, definitely. Technically, you beat me twice in the playoffs because you beat me with my regular team and then you beat me with the bot team. Thank God that is no longer a thing and we have enough people to the league. Anyway, but we have a ton of moves that were made here that will obviously affect fantasy football. I'm going to go quickly down these names. You let me know if there's anybody that kind of stands out to you as far as like who will be affected the most from a fantasy standpoint. I'm just going to start off at the top, starting with the QBs, going to running backs, wide receivers, tight ends.
Okay.
So
good luck, Jared.
From the QB standpoint,
it's a wheel of fortune or something.
Derek Carr and Jameis Winston now in NOLA. Marcus Mariota over with the Eagles and Jalen Hurts. Aaron Rodgers should soon be on his way
Probably
to the New York
the Jets, right?
Yeah, it's like most likely going to the Jets. We got Matt Ryan being released from his contract, so no longer a fantasy viable player, obviously not playing on any team right now. Jacoby Brissett given a chance to take over for the Washington Commanders as their number one because Cleveland let him go. Gardner Minshew going to the Colts now to possibly be their number one because they also let go of Carson Wentz.
Return of the Minshew, baby.
The mustache and all that. Yeah, exactly.
I love that guy.
Mike White now with Miami after starting for the New York Jets, and obviously they have the Tua situation to go through. Sam Darnold now with the Niners. Daniel Jones staying with the Giants, continuing that continuity with the team. Baker Mayfield now to the Bucks. Jimmy G to the Raiders.
This list to Jared.
Don't worry, I'm kind of picking and choosing as I.
Yeah. I was like, just kind of picking and choosing. The names will stick out. Taylor Heineke now in Atlanta, which is another weird, but I'm surprised Washington didn't stick with him. PJ Walker now in Chicago. Of those names specifically, do any kind of stand out to you as far as like who will kind of have a large impact from the fantasy standpoint with their new teams?
I mean, it's hard to say, I would say, but I mean, Jay talked him up, and I will see what he does in Atlanta. But Taylor Heineke is like, he was slanging at the end of the year. So, I mean, hopefully he brings that to Atlanta. And like, I'm thinking that might be something nice and big for him. Was it Jacobs in New York? The Giants quarterback? Jones in New York. So you had so many days, I was like, freaking like,
yeah, so it was a lot of names.
But like him staying, I think like you said bringing continuity and everything, like that's an amazing stay for him. I think he showed that he can run that offense and be a piece there. But a lot of the names you named in the beginning was literally like they're leaving to go to be a second string somewhere else. And like a Sam Darnold being a third string somewhere else. Depth charts. I mean, it's hard to say, but I think the one name that literally stood out was Taylor Heineke. Jay talked him up. I jumped on board at the end of the season. I can't believe Washington let him go. It's really hard to believe Washington let him go in that regard.
Especially because he
was doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
He was doing a lot of things there, and it was good things. It wasn't like he was just, I'm doing my job. I'm making this team
who's
the
Commanders QB now? QB one?
Tyler Heineke. Or excuse me. Sorry. Gardner or Jacoby Brissett.
That's a big get, though, because you got to think Eric Bieniemy clearly has an idea what he wants to do. So that means Jacoby does something that Heineke doesn't. And Heineke's a really talented guy. So clearly there's something that he's got in mind down there.
I agree.
And for what Jacoby did in Cleveland, like he had to get.
He did fantastic in Cleveland.
He had to get to me, he will be this year's Geno Smith, if I'm going to put it plainly. Like he'll have. I like Gardner Minshew.
That was where I was going next.
I'll say this: the Colts are a little farther behind.
Yeah, I don't think they have as much pieces to help him get to that point.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, if he fails, you had Nick Foles there. But I mean, at the same time, like I just want to see like these quarterbacks succeed, especially as they're moving. I mean, there's got to be reasons why coaches
and the point I was getting at
looking
is
at them.
This year. our league will be a lot deeper. There will be a lot more people paying attention to the players in the league. So obviously these second and third kind of options may come into play. So it'll be an interesting year.
I'm not gonna have Josh Allen and Burrow on my team, dog.
Yeah, you definitely will not this year. I mean, unless you go back to back in first and second round, and then obviously it's like, oh, okay, well, if you wanted to throw your picks,
who wants to trade Jared?
Yeah.
I'm going with Trey Lance, number 8 again.
Number 8.
I think it was the 8th round. I don't remember, but
I know.
Oh,
Kieran took it down already. He don't even care.
Yeah, I ripped that poster off a long time ago. Anyway, I couldn't stand looking at it after I lost 3
times.
But those are fantastic points. I want to kind of throw it back to you two because I'm going to let you guys kind of have an open floor discussion about this one. Obviously, we have the running backs, the wide receiver, the tight ends, all positions that are very prevalent in fantasy, and they will definitely be affecting our draft. Some of the key names to keep out for: Miles Sanders now with Carolina. Rashad Penny ends up sliding to Miles Sanders' spot with the Eagles. Jamal Williams now with NOLA. Ezekiel Elliot possibly on his way to New York to help the Jets kind of stack up that team. There are rumors. He hasn't officially made it official. He just got cut from the Cowboys. Yeah. Leonard Fournette was cut as well. David Montgomery over to Detroit. Deontay Foreman to Chicago. We got Juju to the Patriots. Paris Campbell and Darius Slayton to New York Giants. Alan Lazard to the New York Jets. Jacoby Myers to Vegas. Brandon Cooks to Dallas. Noah Brown to Houston. I mean, there's so many names here. I'm sure you guys are all looking at lists as you're kind of talking it through with me as well. Nolan, specifically for you, is there any name that kind of stands out to you that will probably have a little bit of a better year or a little bit of a worse year as far as the people that I shouted out?
One that actually popped up in my head, and just because I was looking at him earlier in the fantasy season last year, but Alan Lazard moving to the Jets, obviously he was, I guess you could say, Rodgers' go-to guy on that team.
Very much so.
And now he's most likely going to be paired up with him again. So, I mean, that could be perfect chemistry issue thing for the Jets moving in with that. But, Ezekiel Elliott, I think he got a bad rub last season. Pollard stepped up. I think he absolutely crushed it. And
a guy who I think will possibly go in the first or second round for fantasy. I'm just saying that right now. Tony Pollard. That's going to be a name to look out for.
He's over there trying to bait you guys into people. Come on, man. I see you, Coyote.
Yeah, this would be crazy if you went in the first round.
Number 1 draft pick overall.
It's like, personally, I would take Zeke over anybody else in the first round, 100%.
Oh, my God. Take Mac Jones first as a quarterback.
Very sweet Jesus. But, yeah, I mean, the Jets, I think, if they get Ezekiel Elliott, it's only going to be a veteran running back kind of running the game. Rodgers is going to be the last
There
piece
are a lot of
that
teams rumored for him, but it does make sense for him if he wants to kind of have a resurgence of a year to go to a team that's technically on paper stacked. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, they had Garrett Wilson, who was phenomenal last season as a
offensive player of the year for the rookies. Yep.
But yeah, I think those are the two main names that, and obviously they're both going to the Jets, or one of them is proposed to be going to the Jets, but all in all, I think that those are the two names that really stuck out. They probably will have a great season. Lazard most likely will at least repeat what he wasn't exactly a starter, I would say, but at the same time he gets high targets from Rodgers, and then you have Ezekiel in the backfield. Boom.
Agree 100%. Going to throw it over to you, Jay. I mean, any names that kind of stuck out to you from lists that you've seen, people that you've seen kind of moved? Is there anybody that you're kind of possibly honing in on for the fantasy season?
Your boy out of Pittsburgh, missed the wideout, Pickens or Pickett. And we always got him flip-flopped, but that guy is primed to have a breakout year. And I got one that I'll give out for free, just for all of you, because I care so much. You might want to keep your eyes on Kadarius Toney. Okay, that guy came in. We stole him basically for nothing. Made some phenomenal, huge plays down the stretch. Once he got a little bit healthy, we kept him sat out with his hamstring for like the last couple weeks of the season because we had enough pieces to get it done. I'm just saying, definitely got to keep on your bench. case you might need a wide receiver in the pinch because you never know what he's going to pop off.
Keone's over here like, Jay, you screwed me over, bro.
I know
Sorry.
That was one of those guys that I feel like is going to be projected as a late round pick. That I would
let him
say
talk
is
about
probably
the Chiefs,
like a mid
the
round.
Chiefs studs, and
or Sky Moore. I could also see Sky Moore having
can't-
a great run this year.
It's
But
like
we'll see.
Basically, go with any Chiefs
Receiver.
person. And like
Well,
anybody who
Pacheco's
receives
going to
the
be out of there in the first round for most people, I'd imagine. For most drafts,
Yeah.
he's going to be gone easily.
I'm gonna project
Jamal
that
Williams also
Pacheco,
gonna be a big
Mahomes, and Kelsey will be gone by the third round.
100%. Those will be my first
right
3
now.
picks. Thank you. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, guys. Let's spread them
Come
out.
that bye week, I am screwed, but I will make
Spread
it
them
work.
out. Cody, who you taking? Nolan. Who you taking, Nolan? Who you taking?
I don't know.
That will be my first 3
I'm going to take Kelsey, guys. I'll take Kelsey.
Oh my god.
Oh,
Good lord.
You guys can have the other two. Fight over the other two.
But no, I think Jamal Williams also is going to have another phenomenal year in New Orleans.
You're telling me. I was like, even as a backup for Alvin Kamara, I mean,
Doesn't matter. He's still gonna find the end zone.
Often as Alvin Kamara gets injured, I was like, that was
Thank you.
such an underrated pickup for them. Jamal Williams will go off with that team. I'm just calling it right now.
Thank you, because I had Jamal Williams last year. I mean, not Jamal Williams, Alvin Kamara last year.
Bro, are you
gonna play this week?
I remember.
for real. It was like a 50-50 chance you had him playing or
Him
not playing.
and Broncos receivers were driving me insane, bro.
Yeah. They didn't
It's
drive
okay,
me that
guys. The
insane 'cause
Broncos
he
are going to be
has
good
one.
now, right? 'Cause we got Sean Payton and Rex Ryan.
It's funny because there's
Is that enough to finally win a game against Patrick Mahomes?
There are
No.
two guys that I feel like
No.
Chicago picked up that I feel like are going to be very underrated. PJ Walker was one of those guys because I feel like he will be an underrated backup quarterback. Robert Tonyan out of Green Bay, a fantastic blocking tight end, but more importantly, he has big hands. He's going to be like an underrated receiver for that team. So I'm going to be so interested to see the Cole Kmet, Robert Tonyan kind
That
of tandem.
1-2. Oh my God.
They're going to be, I was like, honestly, people are sleeping on the Bears, but that
They
team,
really are.
I'm just saying, Jay.
That could be the young, fiery team getting out there in the NFC.
I'm saying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Nolan's calling it. I think that's a perfect place to put them. That kind of 8, 9, 10 realm of wins, and they'll be possibly in like the wild card playing into. They'll be a team that'll be scary in the next couple of years. But I think
I was going to say that I think their team is going to be brand new to winning, but I think the whole season will build up to something very magical for them. I think that they built this team very well.
I was like, more importantly, it'll be a year to kind of justify whether or not Justin Fields is their guy. I mean, if he doesn't do it this year with a lot of guys that they literally added weapons on top of weapons on top of weapons for him this year. So if it's not his year to kind of shine and the next couple of years aren't his years to develop, I mean.
This should be a similar arc to Jalen Hurts this year. It should be a very similar arc that we see with Jalen.
You and I are on the same mind frequency right there.
That's what I see happening. Also, I'd like to say with this year's draft and how many quarterbacks are in it, I'm hoping the NFC within the next 5 seasons with this particular draft class finally gets to a point where they're at least comparable to the quarterback dominance that we have in the AFC. Because it's just so – that's what killed Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl. When you really sit and think about it, who did he have to play?
Yeah.
The best one was Dak Prescott once because he was hurt the other time and he played Cooper Rush.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the gauntlet of quarterbacks in the NFC. Aaron Rodgers was trash, so he doesn't count, right? Brock Purdy was not – really Brock Purdy the time you played him in the, you know what I mean? Like that's just that's not real. Daniel Jones isn't real, you know, like at all, not even a little bit.
Just give the ball to Barkley and you're good to go.
Yeah, but then meanwhile you look at the other side, like you have Pat, you got Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, we had Lamar Jackson. Like it just keeps going on and
Josh
on and
Allen,
on down Josh Allen, down the list. I'm sorry,
What do
I
you guys think?
intentionally forgot Josh Allen.
I think he was going to leave
end up.
You know, it's funny. I was like, I knew he was going to leave him out. I got to give him his flowers, but I knew Jay was going to leave him off the list. Yeah.
And I will argue to a good extent that Derek Carr is also in that conversation. Like there is a litany of very talented teams with quarterbacks that were helming in the AFC.
He was a better mid quarterback than the NFC's mid quarterbacks.
That's what I'm saying, which is why I think New Orleans is a great move for him because his mid is going to catapult him through the NFC. Like, no joke, because that is not a joke at all.
Make sure you draft him, Nolan.
I'm hoping for a Drew Brees situation for Derek Carr because I genuinely like him as a person. I genuinely like Darren Carr as a human being. I do. So I'm hoping for a Drew Brees arc. But when he was wearing that black and silver, fuck Derek Carr. Okay, let's be real.
Mommy.
Now that the silver is gold, let's go, Derek. Yeah, get out there, Ned. Yeah, man.
I'm your biggest cheerleader.
So cool, Ned.
Now it's like, I hope you have a Geno Smith year.
I really do. I do, yeah.
He's like, no, I mean, for real.
Those are all fantastic points. It's funny because this is definitely a deeper quarterback class than most. This will also be a deeper tight end class than most. There are a lot of kind of athletic freaks coming out in this class. So for all intents and purposes, this is supposed to be a pretty deep, pretty strong class. This will be a very telling year. There are a lot of NFC teams at the top of the draft that will possibly pull in a brand new quarterback. So those are also names to be looking out for. I'm just saying there will be at least one. And I think every year there's at least one of those young quarterbacks that ends up showing out from a fantasy perspective. So we'll
find out.
Leave it at, just gotta wait and see. Yeah,
I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Also,
anyway,
where do you guys think Austin Eckler is gonna go?
I still want him to go to Chicago, even though I know that's not going to happen. But
for some reason, I could see the Browns. Just I don't know why.
Oh, I know
because they can't.
To Miami.
I don't know why. They always get the really popular and good running backs.
Oh, I know. If he ends up going to Miami, I'm gonna be. If he goes, not Miami, Cleveland, I'm gonna be so upset. But I feel like you're right.
Can he go to Jacksonville and help my boy out? Come on, man.
That would be so good.
That would be nice.
That one too would be.
Eckler, bro. That would be a killer 1-2 right there.
Oh yeah,
that's disgusting.
That would be.
Or he could come to Kansas City and get a free ring.
Oh hell no! Here we go.
I mean, if he does,
send him to Buffalo. Get Josh some help.
We can't afford anyone. Okay,
yeah,
relax.
If he does,
get Josh some help.
We're literally moving money for Chris Jones. We can't afford anyone.
Yeah, it's funny because of all the movement that happened in the last couple of weeks, I'm not really sure. I do think that one name that was interesting that was kind of thrown out there because of money, they're not really tied up to too many because a lot of their team is young, so they're not really tied to too many expensive players, would be the New York Jets, who would be an interesting team for him to end up with. Especially if you do have Rodgers in tow, Garrett Wilson, and those boys.
See, it's like, instead of fuck Derek Carr, it's really fuck.
I'm gonna actually, you know what? Before I finish,
don't give the guy help.
Before I finish this pod, I kind of want to throw this last one over to whoever wants to take this one on. But Jay, I'm going to throw it to you first. Who is the best defensive tandem as far as corners in the league? We have Stephon Gilmore and Trayvon Diggs, right? In Dallas, we have Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard in Miami. And we have them two young boys, Sauce and Reed, over in New York for the Jets. Who of those three do you think is going to be the best tandem?
Well, prior to one's departure, I would have argued none of them because there's a Super Bowl winning tandem of cornerbacks.
Oh my God!
But Sauce Gardner and
they got
the New York
left
Jets
off the list for a reason.
It's not close.
Your boy.
It's not
Your
close.
Boy.
It's those two. As long as those two can get bolstered, that secondary is gonna be fine. So it's the pair in New York. Not even close.
It's fun. I should have added.
You really want to get technical? Who the best set of tandem corners is? It's probably the ones that have the rings on their finger.
Nolan, do you have any thoughts? Who your top tandem might be for the next for the upcoming year?
I'm going strictly from a fantasy standpoint. I think it's definitely Sauce and Reed because he held Justin Jefferson to an abysmal outing on one of my lovely weeks playing.
I do recall.
Yes. So
If there is anybody,
Justin Jefferson,
if there's
please.
anybody that could take that Revis Island title, that boy could very much well be on his way up.
Jets
that
could
upper
be
echelon.
a sleeper. I don't know. Like Rodgers could be just mid as
I didn't want to say it.
I
didn't want to say it, but I'm gonna say it. If Rodgers ends up being anywhere near the caliber of quarterback that he once was many years ago, that Jets team will be a very scary team to play, no matter what. Because Robert Saleh has done tremendous things with their entire team, including that defense. So
and I wonder how
got some young studs. I mean, offensive and defensive players
in New York for him. So maybe he could just get back to that glossy-eyed look and slang the ball, man.
Exactly.
I still think they should draft a quarterback. I do.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
To sit.
Well, you said it's a big draft class for quarterbacks.
That'd be a great person to sit behind and learn from. Well,
on the field.
Mainly just sit and watch what he does.
On the field.
Don't do anything that he's doing.
Don't
you know what I
dumbass.
meant? Not the mentor standpoint. I meant
We're all over here.
Don't
Don't be a dumbass, man.
They're not all Alex Smith. You know what I mean? Like that's the truth. So I mean, I think getting a guy in that's young that can watch Aaron Rodgers, having the coach there saying, "Hey, see how he's doing? Don't do any of that when you play, but keep watching because he's horrible." Learn from his mistakes. That's how you will be better.
Don't do what he does.
That is a perfect way to end this segment of the Fifth Down. As we break down all of the free agency and fantasy side of the football realm, obviously we're going to have a lot more moves to be talking about in the next few weeks. We have a lot of guys who were cut that will soon be signed, and then obviously the Aaron Rodgers deal that's not yet official will probably be official in the next coming weeks. But we'll get to those as later episodes come up. Nolan, where can the people find you?
You guys can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch at NolanKYT, NOLANKYT.
Your boy, Jared, where can the people find you?
On Instagram and Twitch at JShirai, JSHIRAI, and on Twitter at JShirai808.
And sir, 2-time Super Bowl winner, Jalen Holston. Where can the people find you?
I would like to just state for the court and the judge in question, I have not won a Super Bowl. I just root for a team that has won 2 Super Bowls.
Won the Super Bowl.
Thank you.
When the Steelers win, I won the Super Bowl.
I won 2 seasons ago.
It's like every time I watch, they win. So Super Bowl.
Exactly. You can find me on Twitter at Jalen Holston. You can find me on Instagram at @artbyjalen. You can find me on Twitch at Mokathanos_LGG.
And before I get into mine, you can also follow us on Instagram at the Poi N Soy Podcast, and you can follow me Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch at KONEE. That's KAYOHKNEE. We've been rocking them reels a lot more recently for the Poi N Soy Podcast, so please check out that fire content. And for the rest of us here, I think that'll do it, right? That's all we got for the Fifth Down.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
So it's been a pleasure. It's been a joy from all of us here at Poi N Soy.
Good vibes and love, everybody.
Yeah, fuck
bang,
you
bang.
there, car.
Shoot.
Thank you.